This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
This is Things I Found Online podcast. TIFO to our friends, which includes you. And this episode is 100. Yes.
Episode 100, everybody. Round of applause.
Episode. I am Jamie Alcroft, and today our Centurion episode is graced by the presence of award-winning documentary filmmakers A.J. Eaton and Lauren Duback. And did you know that our host Louise Palanker, otherwise known as Wheezy, is also a documentary filmmaker?
Thank you for noticing,
Yes.
Jamie. My travel vlogs are epic. The Prague vlog up to 108 views on YouTube. Yes.
Wow.
Very
That was the
proud.
river cruise, wasn't it?
It was a river. It was a river cruise. Yes. No. I love filmmaking. I've got one doc short in festivals right now, and well, we can talk about other things I've done. But you guys are the true pros. All right.
Well.
So, what we want to know, what we want to explore, is how is the internet impacting filmmakers and film watchers? Most of us fall into at least one of those categories. So joining us today are filmmakers A.J. Eaton. Yay! Click on link. And Lauren Sinclair Duback. Yay! They are using the internet to share their work, research, network, become inspired, and to appear on a podcast about finding things online, which you have now found online, full circle. Yay, internet. A.J. Eaton. His highly acclaimed film is David Crosby, Remember My Name. And here's what the internet says about this title. With unflinching honesty, self-examination, regret, fear, exuberance, and an unshakable belief in family and the transformative nature of music, singer-songwriter David Crosby shares his often challenging journey. You can currently find David Crosby, Remember My Name, streaming on iTunes, Amazon Prime, YouTube, and Vudu. It seems to me like when you look at the film, you're like, how do you gain entree into David Crosby? It seems like that's not an easy pathway. How did that transpire for you?
Well, thanks for having me here.
Thanks for coming.
My brother, Marcus Eaton, is this really talented singer-songwriter, and he caught the attention of Crosby, and which was like, a friend said, you guys should meet, and that meeting really kind of went really well. Crosby is a guy who's looking out for people who, young singer-songwriters. And so that turned into them, that meeting went so well that turned into them, Crosby saying, come to the studio and play on this track. Because my brother's an amazing guitarist. Yeah. And play on this track. And then they started writing a song together. Then they went on tour together. Somewhere in there, I was invited to come to the studio. And, our dad...
Oh, come on, you pushed your way out.
Possibly.
You invited yourself.
I just showed up.
Yeah.
And so, our dad's a songwriter.
Yeah.
And so, I learned to walk in a recording studio because we had one at our house growing up. My dad produced a lot of acts, and he was also, had a couple of record deals. And so I walked in, and I really didn't have any expectations of what to expect when meeting, on the opportunity to meet Crosby because, I've heard about his struggles with addiction. I heard about his liver transplant, so I was thinking that he was going to be, but when I saw was defied my expectations, which was like his full faculties were there, and he was really energetic, and he was they're working on this luscious piece of music, and I said, God, I love those changes on that track. I love it. And he goes, you like that, huh? And from that point forward, we were like friends. We were talking about music, and we were talking about things that he was looking at forward-looking conversations about music and new ideas, and this guy was writing his first solo album in 20 years. This album was called Cross. He was
and how old was he at this point?
He was 69.
69.
Yeah. So at that point in time, I said, he'd heard that I was a filmmaker, and I said, I should bring my crew here. I'll just bring a camera here. We should just get some footage of you guys working together just for posterity.
Right.
And kind of had a hunch. And so the minute I turned cameras on, I saw that he kind of had this thing, like he's really photogenic. And then I asked him, like, what are you thinking about today? And he's like, well, these songs are really, when the muse starts talking by, and I'm just like, keep rolling. Yeah. And so then we kept as much as I could afford to get my crew there or myself, shoot footage. And then originally just, basically broached the idea. I was like, we got to do a documentary Crosby.
So did you actually go on tour with him?
Yeah, I did as much as I could. Like the way that going along on a tour would be like, I would have to have my own bus, and or I would have to have my own way. So I would pop in on tour as much as I could, but I wasn't on the bus or anything. But I did shoot a number of performances.
Well, that must have been expensive too.
Oh,
How did
for
you
sure.
finance that?
I begged, borrowed, and pled from a lot of folk, but just
You didn't do any kind of campaign online or anything?
No.
A GoFundMe?
you can't do that for a Crosby doc. Yeah.
Like I started the Cow Sales doc before any of that crowdfunding existed, but I had the same kind of moment where it was like they were going to sing the national anthem at Fenway Park. And I did not have their permission yet to make a documentary, but I kind of said to them, this will come and go, and I will either have filmed it or not filmed it. So they were like, all right, come along. But you're paying your own way.
Yeah.
Like if you want to be a documentary filmmaker, you basically have to beg to be there and pay for everything yourself. And so you have enough footage to where maybe somebody...
Sparks an interest.
Yeah.
And even then, you're going to... There's so many obstacles. That's why I kind of like am completely delighted that it's taking off online, because people now have access to documentaries. You used to see it as a category on the Oscars. And I'm like, oh, maybe one day I would watch one of these documentaries if I stay up late on PBS. But now people are realizing like they're good. You're going to learn a story that you didn't even know you were interested in. So that's the beauty of documentaries. But they've all, over the history of filmmaking, been made mostly by people that were passionate enough to finish it. How many have been started?
Right.
They're hard.
They're very hard.
They're so hard.
And you also, the quintessential question on a documentary is how are you going to end it? And that's, the nice thing if you're doing a documentary, and this sounds bizarre, if you're doing a documentary with someone who's passed away, well, you know
How it ends.
Yeah.
you know basically how it ends. But when
Convenient.
some's living,
What's your story?
how do you end it?
You can't kill them
No.
Yeah.
What's your
but
art?
in your case,
because you've got too much footage.
Yeah, exactly.
in your case, he was ill though, and so you didn't know whether that would happen before in the course of your shooting.
Well, that was one of the terrifying things.
Yeah.
Because when we were trying to get the financing, and I was going like, look, the more time that we waste,
Yeah.
he's going to go out on the road, and if you see the movie, at the beginning, we basically set the stakes, and this isn't BS. This is real life. He has 9 stents in his heart now. He's had a liver transplant. He's got 8. He's got all these ailments, and he's a very fragile person. So, going out on the road, every concert could be his last. And so I'm going, why you guys are deciding like, oh, I don't know if we can finance this or it's too expensive. We could be losing it. And so that's why I was like, let's just go with private. And I was, borrowing money from friends and family saying, this could be it.
It's like a sunset. You have to get there.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Well, I remember you have going up to Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
And you'd call and say, I can't make it. I just got a call from Crosby, and he's up in Santa Barbara. I got to go up there.
We're going. That's
And
it.
Boom. And you just go up and shoot.
You throw a camera in your trunk and you go.
Well, Remember My Name world premiered at Sundance in January and was quickly acquired by Sony Pictures Classics. It opened in theaters this summer and is now available on home video, Blu-ray. It has been called one of the best rock docs of all time by Rolling Stone. Rotten Tomatoes has it at 92%. Here's a collection of reviews. And I picked a couple, and because they're fun, I guess you pop to the top if you're on there often reviewing stuff, because some of these people look like we're regulars. We hang out. So Amy Nicholson wrote, "I found this film really, really striking. I was glad that this wasn't just a hagiography."
A what?
What is a hagiography?
I know what a hagiography is.
What is it?
It's a celebration of a saint. And it's a celebration it's a story of someone who was a saint. So your
like a puff piece.
Puff piece, and or the telling of a saint. That was where that word I think originated from. So yes, we knew. I mean, once Cameron Crowe and I kind of got together, and I showed him some of the footage that I'd already shot, and he was like, "Man, let's not." Here, as a fan, I don't want to see a bunch of talking heads. Let's let him talk. And I was like, he's ready to talk.
Yeah.
We both saw that at the same time. So,
well, nobody else would come and talk. They're all so pissed off at him.
well, true. That's true.
Yeah, no friends. So,
But I think you could also, I mean, you could also do this thing where you could go like, you know, you get people that were figures of the time and go like,
Sure.
you know,
This is his imprint, and this
Yeah.
is what he means to
Gore
it.
Vidal's impression of David Crosby.
exactly,
Really, who cares?
exactly, and go, oh, he was the guy with the mustache, and we just didn't want to see that, and so, yeah, it was
You have to tell the truth, or it's not interesting.
right.
And that some of the recent rock docs that I've seen have more blemishes and therefore more character and more discussion points afterwards. Like with David Crosby, I was talking to Lauren before you got here, AJ, and I was saying, like, do you think that he's a guy where he knew your most vulnerable vein and he went for it? And he almost took pleasure in it. Like, is that why no one's speaking to him?
Oh,
Or is it just self-sabotage that he doesn't really feel like he deserves friends?
I don't want to give away. There's one thing in the movie that I think that is the giveaway.
Okay.
But
Telling point.
yeah, but I don't want to give that away because
No,
those
don't give
people
anything
who are
away. I'm just
Does it
like,
have to do with his
I'm
halitosis?
examining his character with you because that's what a good film invites you to do, is to say, like, what's this guy really about? Like,
Yeah,
what's his?
but the guy will, I don't know what our rating is here, but he'll screw with you. I don't know what words I can use online on the air
I
here.
just said halitosis, so it's wide open.
Yeah, that's
You
I
can
think
use
you're-
syllables.
Halitosis.
I
yeah.
saw him doing
Who is
that.
Hal? I hear he's a great guy.
I saw him doing that to you guys. I know exactly what you're talking
He
about.
screws
Yeah.
with you. He'll purposely screw with you just for the fact that he can do it. And he knows that he can do that. Or he'll sometimes will be like, I knew that he had a hard drive full of footage that I needed.
Right.
And I went up and said, listen, the production will pay for this and I need to get this transferred or whatever. And he was like, no, you can't use that. When we had because he just likes to
Set you up.
expletive.
He likes to
with
set you up.
Yeah. And, or he'll just do it and he'll go, no, don't want to do it. And that's his little defiant
power
little
thing.
Yeah.
That's his power. Sure.
Or that kid. I mean, Crow, Cameron and I were saying, Crow. When we were making the movie, that I was like, one of my hypotheses is that he's that kid in a cape. You know, from the he's just desperate for attention, and so if he can't get it through the music, he'll get it through other means.
Manipulation.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I've seen the film a couple times now, and you still end up liking him. I did, and
Of course,
I
he's
think
very
that was the incredible denouement of the movie, and the end of it was really wonderfully done. You know, how do you end it? Well, I think you really nailed it, because you do end up, despite all the facts, you say, okay, well, this guy, and you even see him screwing with you.
Yeah.
He screws with the audience.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but for some reason I forgave him.
Thanks. You know,
I'm just that kind of guy.
well, I think the more he's honest, and the more he shows that we show warts and all, the more you like him. And that was a Cameron Crowe thing that we had discovered in the edit process.
But you guys were really good, and your lines of questioning and where you went, and where you decided to go, and how you gently handled every turn in the road was like so deft, and that comes across. And I think that this guy really likes smart, interesting people.
Yeah.
And he was hanging with a couple of them.
Well,
He was.
I
He
like
was.
to hang around with smart and interesting people, just rub off with me.
Well,
but
that's why you're here today.
Thank you.
But
Yes, exactly.
Now, how much footage had you shot before Cameron got involved? It was about 3 or 4 years of footage, wasn't it?
Yeah, a couple years. We had probably 3 years of just
About 3 years. Okay.
3 albums recording. There was an album called Cross, which was his first solo album in 20 years. And then he recorded Lighthouse and Sky Trails back to back. So he had basically like 5-6 weeks straight in Groove Masters in Santa Monica, and he recorded 2 albums back to back. So I had enough material. 2 sets of producers came in, Michael League so I had all this verite of that.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, a lot of that didn't make the cut, but we needed to shoot it in order to know.
Yes.
You know,
And
of
also,
course.
it's not
Filmmaking.
just to know; it's also that you earn the trust
Yeah.
just being around.
Yeah.
And you have to be a good hang. And
Exactly.
There's just a lot of elements to documentary filmmaking.
How do you know this from being documentary about musicians?
Yes.
Because that's a whole other thing.
It really
because
is.
they're in their element, and I kept saying to a lot of the camera guys, I was like, music first, film second.
Okay.
Please do not use your lenses and don't get up in their faces.
Right.
And because if he's writing something and someone comes and sticks a
Yeah.
camera in his face, it totally disturbs. And there were a lot of camera people that were not asked to come back,
They
not
didn't-
because they weren't good camera people, that they just didn't understand.
They weren't getting it. Yeah.
I had a really great way of like say use your lens, stand in the back, get it, grab an angle, and that is where you can see the artist working in their element.
Yeah, and let things walk in and out of frame. You don't have
Right.
to follow everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's really great.
But a
That's,
lot of the movie, sorry to cut you off, but a lot of the movie, the third of the
Great.
movie is just me and a camera. When Crosby is in his hotel room by himself doing his, diabetes testing and walking down the hall by himself, I had me and the DP. I mean, I worked as a DP for a while, but me and the DP had this small rig where I could just, turn it on, get it focused, get that audio going, and just go. And he, after a while, just forgot that I was there.
Yeah.
And those were your gold moments.
Yeah,
Definitely.
definitely.
How did Cameron Crowe get involved?
So Cameron, I had this amassed this footage, but I knew that the next step on the production was going to be like, making a music doc, especially the music about this, era of music with Crosby, Stills and Nash and the Byrds and Crosby, Stills and Young, is expensive, and you need to, you have to have the proper financing. So I was out I had a bunch of bizarre meetings in Hollywood. I met with one agency, and they're like, well, we'll finance the production, but we would need to infuse all of our clients that are hip hop artists in the movie.
Oh boy.
So that wasn't going to go. And I knew Crosby wasn't going to I knew he wasn't going to respond to that.
Yeah.
But, I was given the trust, I earned Crosby's trust. And so, he was like, well, then let me know what you think. And so I basically had kind of given up. I was so broke. I was going to lose my apartment.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it wasn't fun. And we went back. Jill Mazursky, who is one of our EPs, who has been a champion of this movie from the beginning, and she produced this awesome documentary she's got one out called Fiddlin' right now, but another doc that I saw called Keep On Keeping On, which is about Clark Terry and Quincy Jones and this young, and that's one of the best music docs I've ever seen.
Wow.
It's so great. And so I saw that, and I was like, this is because you kind of broached on at the beginning. I think that not just music docs have kind of found their own thing, but it's also a stylistic thing too, where it's not just a presentation of a very chronological presentation of facts and figures. It's like they're constructed like you would construct a screenplay, a good, and so that's kind of how Keep On Keeping On hit me, or Anvil, Story of Anvil.
Yeah.
It just the stakes were there.
Yeah.
And so Jill was really interested, and so Jill and I had gone to a couple of these bizarre meetings together, and I had told her, I was like, I think I'm just going to bank the footage and just move on, and went into her office because her and J.J. Abrams have been longtime collaborators. They wrote their first screenplays together, and she has an office at Bad Robot, and so I went into Bad Robot. I'm dropping some names now.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And
I live in that alley.
okay, so there you go.
Yeah, you do. That's right.
So I went into to Bad Robot, and there was Cameron, and it was like, that was it. I was like, that's the producer. That's the guy.
Wow.
And then, he doesn't just produce movies. He's not a producer. He's a director and director only. But anyway, and Jill said, I'll go advocate. I'll go talk to him about it. And it was like he wanted to meet with me the very next day.
Oh, man.
And so I remember him sitting, we were sitting at Bad Robot, tapping his yellow, his pencil on his notepad. He's like, this is really cool. And I was like, look, he's recorded 2 albums in 2 years. He's done this album, and I think we could do this. And I've got this footage, and I'll show it to you. And he's like, well, I'm so busy with this show that he was doing called Brody's,
right.
that was produced through Bad Robot. He's like, I'm committed, for what could be years on this series, but it wasn't renewed, unfortunately. And but he's like, but let me do this. Let me do an interview with you. Let me do the next interview, because I've interviewed him. He was like one of my first great interviews as a kid journalist, and I was like, yeah, wow, let's do that.
Yeah.
So the minute that Crosby and and Cameron sat down, there was a different dynamic of communication. Like me and Crosby have a community. We were talking about music. We can talk about jazz, McCoy Tyner, Pat Metheny. We can go off.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I could see, and also I could see that Crosby was, because he's a guy who kind of likes to screw around with people sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew that he could push me back and forth a little bit. And I played that part of a beleaguered director. Okay. Oh, yeah, you're right, Crosby. But I got the shot.
Yeah.
And so, but when Cameron came in and they started talking, and Cameron said, "Hey, when did you lose your virginity? I've been wanting to know that." I was like, okay, we're going to go go to the depths that we can go.
Right.
Yeah.
And with each subsequent interview that we did, the more, I mean, Cameron and I would talk beforehand, and I'd be like, well, boy, you know, he talked about his brother and he talked about his dad, and he's like, let's go, we can go deeper there.
Yeah, because you had laid that foundation, and then
Yeah.
he could climb over it.
Yeah, right.
And we had the footage to back it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then, you know, the cool thing about our movie, which was like Michelle Farnola, who is at PCH Films with James Keach, I kind of brought them in at the same time because I knew that we needed the person who knows how to get things done in the documentary world. And so the archival research team from PCH Filmed, this lady, Kate Coe, she knows where to find footage that has never been used before.
And it's so great.
Oh, yeah.
It's so great.
Oh,
If
yes.
you guys love that kind of stuff, this movie is just rich with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a must-see movie. It really is.
So there's a review from Adam Graham, also on Rotten Tomatoes. I like his. It says, throughout, Crosby is true to himself, even if that means coming to terms with being insufferable. Remember My Name is a portrait of an artist in reflection. It's a hard, sobering look in the mirror. It also gives you the impression that he had come to this point in his journey where he was ready to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that means that he would love for his buddies to see this and give,
Maybe
and
forgive him.
give a call?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Like those guys do
feel
mean
empathy for
a
him?
lot to him.
Oh, I'm sure they
For
did.
sure.
That had to be just heartbreaking to lose all those friendships.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like when I could see, because I've been around musicians my entire life, I know a number who should be writing their albums and recording new albums, and art are full of excuses. Or they're afraid to screw up what they did 30 years ago. And they're afraid to take chances. So I saw all of that with Crosby, and I could see like he's indeed in this third act renaissance where he woke up and kind of remembered who he was after kind of getting clean. And again, I was so impressed by this music that he was writing, and I saw that music he was writing lyrics that were like a window into the past. Like there's lyrics that were about Christine. And so I was like, it's all there.
And his voice is still so powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, that was shocking to me, actually.
I was shocked when I first. So, I could see that he was ready to he was ready to talk. Cameron and I could see that he was ready to talk about something and get some things off of his chest.
It was very cathartic for him. It was very cathartic for the audience too.
And how
really was.
does he like the film?
He loves it.
Good.
I mean, the way that we constructed it was that he did not have any editorial say, that's where you need to be with a documentary.
It's so important.
So important.
And so, but you do have to cooperate with him because he's giving you permission to use his music. He's giving permission to use his photographs and cooperating. And so he called me a couple of times during you said that you were going to show me footage and you better show it, and I helped you and I da-da-da. And I said, I'm not going to show you anything until I can show you the whole movie.
That's so important.
Good for you.
And he lost it with me.
Because it's
majorly
scary. I've been there.
Oh yeah.
Really?
I have read late at night some really angry emails, and it keeps you up.
Yeah.
You can't sleep.
Oh,
Yeah.
my
It's
gosh.
very upsetting.
It's not fair to the filmmaker
No.
to show it before you're ready. It just
Right.
isn't, because the
It's not.
vision isn't there.
Yeah.
Or even after you're ready, they're still
well,
angry.
Yeah. Well,
sure.
And what the analogy that I told Crosby, and I was like, look, I can't play you a verse or a chorus of the song. I have to play you an entire song. And there was like this long pause.
Oh,
Yeah.
You're a genius. You speak Crosby.
I speak Crozese.
That's so cool. I mean, like the thing that I would always remind myself when I got really frustrated was that it's not a movie about me. It's a movie about them. Their name's in the title. It's of course they care this much. If there were a documentary about my family, I think I would care a lot. If I felt like something wasn't truthful or wasn't honest or
or was maybe too truthful
or too truthful or too honest or what have you. And so while we're on the subject of people being raw and vulnerable, Lauren Sinclair Duback is here, and her film One explores the elusive bridge between the broken and the unbreakable. Using the words of the great Zen scholar Alan Watts, the filmmakers link hardcore devastation to a powerful awareness of our deeper humanity. One is an emotionally visual journey that asks the questions: what do we want? What would satisfy us? What is it that we are really yearning after? Lauren, can you share what led you to make this film? It is a film about addiction, and it's one of the more beautiful films I've ever watched.
Me too.
And so I was really taken aback. I was not expecting this journey that you took me on.
Thank you.
No.
What happened to me is I was working on a project for a foundation out of Toledo, Ohio, who had asked me to write an educational film for them, because this foundation is really committed to, I would just say, lifting up their community. And one of the organizations that they work with is an organization called DART, which is police officers.
Right.
But they're police officers that believe that incarceration for addiction is not the answer. And they are working very closely with addicts and addicts' families to stop this. And in talking to Sheriff Tharp, who started this organization in Toledo, he said that in Ohio is sort of ground zero for the opioid crisis. And he said, we've got to catch it before it starts, because it's so difficult to stop that addiction once you're on that train. So he asked for an educational film for middle school. And so this foundation, I wrote and produced that with a friend of mine. And so we had all these interviews, because these weren't filmmakers. This is a foundation who's never made a film before. I came to that project a little bit late, and what they had done is hundreds of hours of interviewing addicts, their families, local politicians, doctors, people on human trafficking, blah, 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 blah. And so we were able to do the educational film. And at the end, the foundation said to me, we have all this footage, can you make a documentary? Which to me was a completely different question, because to me, that's a film. That's different than don't do drugs, you know? So a friend of mine, Mike Godecki, who co-directed this with me, I brought him onto the project to say, do we have anything? Because talk about talking heads, and also talk about a subject, the opioid crisis, which is in the news. There's a billion different angles. The drug company angle, the physical, what we now know about how the brain is altered through this. And I went back to what the actual mission of the foundation who funded it, very little amount of money, by the way, very little, but their mission is truly to lift people up. And I think that's where I intersected with this project, because that is what I consider my life mission, whether it's through film or just conversation. So Mike and I thought, how can we touch people? That's what we want to do here, is bring empathy to a subject where, if you look on the Facebook page about addiction, it's let them die. It is so an attack on the addict. They're forgotten. They're losers. They should die. Why are we even trying to help them?
It's their fault.
It's their fault.
Yeah.
Lock them up, all that kind of stuff. And so while there is personal responsibility in our lives, what we decided to do was try to create a story within the story, within these interviews, which is why we ended up making a movie within the movie, which brought in Alan Watts and the
Which
philosophy.
was a brilliant touch.
We deal with addiction.
Yes, I know. I love that. And as Crosby was talking about his addiction and just, the heroin, and I was empathizing with him in understanding it's just the withdrawal is so awful, and the depression after, because of the dopamine and the changes in the brain, is so terrible. He is a man of privilege, so he has his other outs, and then the people that we interviewed, it's difficult because once you're done, you still have to. What do you do? How do you live?
You're always chasing that high. You're always chasing that initial high.
You're chasing meaning. Or you're chasing a feeling of, am I okay?
Yes.
And when we all are, but you kind of like blended the disciplines of philosophy, sociology, psychology, spirituality to help us better understand addiction. Because, if we're honest with ourselves, we're not going on Facebook and calling anybody weak or lazy or what have you. We're recognizing, like, I'm having coffee. It's because if I don't have this, I'm going to get a headache.
Right.
So for anyone to sit here and say you're not addicted to something, whether it's fame or attention or
shopping or Facebook.
Right. Let's be honest. There's something that we look forward to, and it's really about learning how to delay gratification and parse it out during your day so that, well, I'm going to have this when I've finished that. And just...
Giving yourself a reward, you mean?
Yeah, putting yourself on a schedule that because within boundaries there is complete freedom. You don't want to be the slave to something by needing it constantly. You want to be able to say, well, I'm going to get my work done, and then I'm going to have a glass of wine if you can have alcohol. Of course, some people can't even have any alcohol, but you understand the point I'm making. It's like we give people these enormous portions, and then they think they're supposed to eat all of it because that's how much came on my plate. And then pretty soon your stomach wants that amount of food. It's with anything else in life, and what your film was really about was balance.
Yeah.
How do we find balance? And that's a struggle for all of us, whether or not we've ever taken an opioid pill.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. It was really about, and the reason we brought the philosophy of Alan Watts in, and he was our narrator for the film, was we started to look at the existential crisis that was happening, not just with addicts, but the addiction is just one symptom of that. But what's really happening is, we want to feel good. That's human, to want to feel good. But we have to understand, in the context of life, that just isn't what this human experience is. It is not continual feel good.
Right.
It's joy and pain.
Right.
It's feel good, feel bad. And the more that we continue to put out there in an image-oriented culture that it's all about feeling good, and that there are people who are only feeling good, that illusion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But the truth is, understand, and this is what Alan Watts, is his philosophy, and many, many other philosophers. It's crests and troughs.
Right.
It's up and down.
One doesn't exist without the other.
That's right. One doesn't exist without the other.
Yeah.
And if we as just human beings can touch that place within other human beings to say, it's okay, like you're having a bad day. That is part of life. There is no avoiding
You're
that.
You're not doing life wrong.
You're not doing life wrong. So instead of reaching for the anesthesia, whether it's a drink or whether it's, drugs or sex or shopping or whatever it is, embrace that aspect of being human. Ask for help if you need help.
Right. Are we going to break for commercial? Gentlemen, let's do that, and we'll be right back.
This is Brew Crime, a craft beer and true crime podcast.
I'm Mike.
I'm Beck.
And I'm Nina.
And we're your hosts.
We pair a true crime story with a craft beer.
That Nina will probably hate.
Yeah, probably.
Whatever. You can find our show on all your favorite podcast apps, and if you can't find it, contact us and we'll try and change that.
We can be found at brewcrime.com or on Twitter at brewcrime. on Facebook at Brewcrime, or if you want to go to our group, it's group/Brewcrime on Facebook, or on Instagram at Pacific Beer Chat.
Join us as we discuss the horrible crimes that surround us and try not to giggle.
Well, I think beer makes crime more fun, right?
And it's talk about the anesthesia.
Yeah.
Talk about
It's just,
addiction.
and it's
Takes
true.
the
though.
edge off crime.
Yeah.
Sex was always an anesthesia for me because I just fell asleep. Well,
So I've heard.
but yet-
And so did
I've
she.
heard
Yeah.
that.
So did
Yeah.
she.
Well, she fell asleep during it. I fell asleep afterwards. That
So
was
let's
the-
talk a little bit about the festival circuit,
Yes.
because I think all three of us have done that, and it's pretty interesting. Now, are you using Film Freeway or
Film Freeway, yeah.
right? And so, are you giving a lot of like specific strategic thought to where you're submitting?
Or are you just throwing it out
Because
there?
me, I'm just
You're just like, woo!
yeah, like my co-filmmaker will be like, I really want to go to Denver.
Yeah.
So like sometimes it really
That one's
comes.
coming up. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes it comes down to that.
I think part of working with non-filmmakers, so it's very new. There's just this team of 4. So there's 2 producers in Ohio, and then there's myself and Mike. And so they're always trying to figure out like where money is best spent. And, it's expensive to apply to film festivals and to then travel to them and do that. But so I think that we just started in the festivals. We premiered at the Maui Film Festival, and we won the Heal the World Audience Award there. And we've done a few other festivals, and we're kind of winning the same type of awards, the awareness award. So I think that what we're doing now is understanding probably the best avenue for this film is social justice, festivals and things like that. But we've kind of gotten a little sidetracked because, unfortunately, one of our producers, and one of the reasons that she got involved in this foundation, is her son struggled with addiction, and about 6 weeks ago, he lost his life. 22 years old. Overdosed.
Sorry.
So that, in a little group of 4 trying to figure it out, has sort of put a little bit of halt for a second. She's taken a leave of absence. She'll be back November 1st, and then we'll get back to figuring out what to do. I mean, obviously the pinnacle is Sundance.
Well,
That's where you go to get distribution. There aren't that many festivals anymore that will attract distributors. It's the big ones.
yeah.
The little ones, I think the most you can do is build your marketing. Your we've sort of found this lane of awareness and healing and
Yeah.
things like that. But
It's the festival thing is a hard one, and I've produced movies, and I've also directed short films, and I had this wonderful early on festival strategist and publicist, a lady named Kathleen McGinnis, and I directed this short film, and she was like, You'll get into that festival. You can try for Sundance, but you have to understand that Sundance for short films and they have kind of their style of things that they get. So she was really realistic, but she goes, but that's not the end of the world. Because you don't get into Sundance is not the end of the world at all. And as you're finding, there are festivals that are kind of made for your type of film, and so you can succeed very well without having to go with the majors, the Sundances and the whatever. But
Toronto and
Toronto. I mean, we had a movie that premiered that I produced that premiered at Tribeca, and it was the highest rated movie that year at Tribeca. Couldn't find the right distributor for it, and it's just kind of out there in the ether sphere now. So there's irony for you.
Yeah, right.
So dealing with. I can't. I mean, it's about enthusiasm and who's going to get you the best. What festival is going to say, I know we're not the Sundance, but what's going to get? We would love to have you as an opening night film, and we would love to have you, and that might be the thing that you need to get the publicity that you need for your film. So, but it's heartbreaking too, because I have a couple of friends who've made some great films, and they're waiting for the Sundance. And they're, okay, you don't get into sense, so what's next? Or you think that, we're going to pull ourselves out of that festival to hold off for this festival, and then that festival doesn't come through, and then you're like, you
because
don't
they
have
all
it.
want to be a world premiere. They want to. They want to be able to say world premiere.
Yeah.
Like I got the Cow Sills into Santa Barbara, and I
Good
had
festival.
I didn't know. I really didn't know what I had, because I made the movie by myself with a couple of Bill Filipiak and Ian Broyles who helped me, but none of us knew what we were doing. So we made it's a homemade movie. When you watch it, you'll be like, yeah, this looks like a homemade movie. But I mean, it's a good movie, but it's really homemade,
And it should be for the cow sills.
right.
It really goes with the cow sills.
Yeah, well,
really does.
They're
It
homemade.
fits.
I
It
submitted
fits.
it to Rhode Island because they're from
fits.
Rhode Island. It got into Rhode Island. It won an audience award. And then I submitted to Santa Barbara because I live half the week in Santa Barbara. And Santa Barbara calls and they're like, "So is this going to be a world premiere?" And I said, "No, it was in Rhode Island, and it made the AP wire, so that it was in like 1,000 newspapers." And they were like, "Well, have you changed anything?" I'm like, "Yeah, we got some footage, once you pay for the rights from Mike Douglas or Johnny Carson, whatever." Like, and they're like, "Okay, good enough." And so that's all they wanted to know, to be able to say. So it's like, what kind of game are they? What's going? Tell me what is going on, really, because that was my first entree, and I really didn't know what I was doing. But is it that important for the festivals to be able to say this is a world premiere? Can't you just show a good movie?
Well, you would think,
Yeah.
but the truth of the matter is that you want to have your world premiere at the biggest festival that you can possibly get into. It's a
And
strategy.
That's the strategy, yeah.
And sometimes I've, counseled a lot of my, fellow colleagues and filmmakers who are trying to do, their films, or have had films in a couple of festivals myself, where it was like, yeah, it was hard, but we held off. I mean, we were making Crosby, and we thought, well, maybe we could get into Sundance, but maybe we'll get into Tribeca, or maybe we'll get into Toronto. And so, Sundance was a total surprise for us because, my thing with Crosby was, if Sundance says yes, then it's just frosting on the cake. But, we might, even without film festivals, we might be able to go and make a sale to, say, Netflix or an HBO or something like that, because people are interested in Crosby.
And you were in Santa Barbara right after that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, and he's a Santa Barbara local
resident.
Right.
Yeah. So,
But you had your deal by then. 'Cause
we
you,
did.
You got it at Sundance.
Yeah. Sony, SPC, Sony Picture Classics.
I kind of think, to your point, though, that a lot of times these festivals want premieres because it is, as it is for it's a status for that festival. So the festivals are also trying to.
They are, but it's only new once.
I know.
And like the best festivals should want the best films and
Yeah.
not just say, well, we can't take it because
Right.
you've already shown it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like for films to find distribution, I think they need to be seen. And
Yeah.
there's only so many people that fit in a theater. I mean, I guess we're depending on buzz, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Depending on buzz.
But if you get that trickle down, I mean, this is the one place where I hate to use that term, but we had success at, knock on wood, at Sundance.
Yeah.
And so Boulder is a great festival for documentaries, especially. And the documentary people show up there, and it's a really great precursor. There's also Sun Valley Film Festival, which I'm from Idaho, and I was kind of around when we started that festival. And so they've kind of got a cool little niche where they've partnered with Nat Geo, but there's not, and a lot of Hollywood folk have connections to Sun Valley or go up there skiing or whatever. And Jamie and
I can see her movie on Nat Geo because it's so beautifully filmed.
Yeah.
It's like visually striking, and that's what they're kind of known for.
Well, when I went to see your movie at the Burbank Film Festival.
At the
is that-
Awareness Festival downtown.
It was the Awareness Festival. Okay. And I was very aware of the festival really being more worried about the festival surviving than any of the movies getting anything. And that's why I posed the question to the woman who did the Q&A afterwards. I said, what are you doing as a festival to support your filmmakers? What kind of influence are you exerting to bring in distributors to see this? And she had no answer. She had no answer for that. And I'm not putting that festival down because they are a burgeoning festival. They're just trying to get rolling. They're trying to, but Sundance has got the buzz, and so the distributors come there. I don't know whether Burbank has the buzz and the distributors come there, but there's got to be. I am so passionate. I mean, your movie's doing really well, and your movie is just kind of
Starting.
in a this amorphous space where, how do you, because it's so important. It's such an important film. And when you say to somebody, well, I've got this documentary about opioid addiction, the immediate reaction is, oh my God, I don't want to sit through that.
Oh, that's right.
But I would sit through your movie. It was like the Fantasia of documentaries.
Yeah. Thank you.
It really was.
That's right.
Just, wasn't it, Louise? I mean, it was just fantastic.
And maybe you can talk about visual effects and help us understand how you made that happen.
Well, I think that we recognized that we needed to bring beauty,
impact, amazing.
And because we had so little to work with, the philosophy and we really felt that we wanted it to be visually stunning. We wanted that last music video thing that happens and all those images. Mm-hmm. We wanted to alter your consciousness to a certain degree if we could, almost take you on a trip.
Yeah, they created a movie that's a drug.
That's a drug. You wish you were
right.
stoned for it.
That's right. But that was intentional, obviously, to create these visuals that are altering your consciousness, because perhaps that's part of what we're looking for.
We're all easily seduced. Let's just be honest, and we all kind of want to be taken away.
Yes,
that's why we go to the movies in the first place.
In the first place.
Oh,
exactly.
I surrender totally when I go to movies, but I honestly did not expect what I saw when I saw one.
Yeah,
it is just a remarkable film.
Thank you.
Remarkable film.
I'm excited to see it. I apologize. I haven't been able to see it.
There's nowhere to see it.
I don't know where you'd
why.
see it.
Yeah. She gave me a very hard time.
I gave her the link.
We'll all go back to Lauren's place after.
Yeah.
I want to talk to AJ a moment about the animation, because it do you think that this, like, the golden age of documentaries that we entered into is asking more of documentaries? Like, you've got to have more visually going on, and so you have to hire all kinds of people that are experts. So in telling certain parts of the story, like when David Crosby is fired from the Birds, like, you used animation, and it's really it made me laugh. I mean, I know it's not funny what's happening to him, but the animation is so cute.
It's so good.
Thanks.
How did you?
Well, that was an idea that brewed up that came because of me and Mr. Cameron Crowe, brainstorming. And we thought, how are we going to describe these moments? I mean, he tells a great story.
Yeah.
But those were moments in his life where someone didn't have a camera. And we were able, Bobby Hammer, it's a great story about Bobby Hammer and Henry Diltz, who was in the movie.
Yeah.
He was like this fly on the wall, and they were snapping all these photos.
Yeah.
But that was a place where there was like, hey, you're fired from the Birds. Oh, wait, let me get a photo.
Right.
Really.
So we found this guy named Billy Woodward who had worked for Rolling Stone and had done these drawings where he really captured the persona of Crosby. And we reached out to him, and how serendipitous, and he just worked. And we used it in a couple of other places in the movie. In one place it got cut out, but it's in the DVD extras now. But when he finally escapes on the Mayan, he was like totally strung out on drugs, and he had this crazy idea, as addicts have, that he was going to go and escape on his Mayan boat. And when he got there, the boat was not even seaworthy because he hadn't paid anyone to take care of it. And so when he just lies on the back of the Mayan, there's this. And so I'm like, okay, we've got an airplane flying, and directing animation is really fun because there's no limitations. You can zoom in and out of the airplane and go into the Mayan. But we've had that great, beautiful moment. And you're right, like, documentaries used to be like, again, it's like a chronological, like in 1925 there was this, and then we went here.
Educational
school film.
Yes.
They were like newsreels.
Yeah, exactly.
And now they've grown because of people like you. I think that's wonderful. People like all of you.
I think that you were talking earlier too about, the chronological thing versus structuring it like a screenplay, which is the way we approached it. Even though we just had interviews, we thought, who's our hero, who's our anti-hero, what's the up, the down, the whole we tried to structure it where we didn't have the right facts or the right, stuff. We, the whole thing is scored with music, which was
good.
Trying to help
support. He's huge into the marriage of music and movies. And
that's my whole thing.
Yeah.
And
but you got to be careful, though. because you should be able to watch your movie without.
Yes.
And the story should work.
I know.
Yeah.
We weren't really as confident as we could have been in that because of the limitations that we had, Although I think that, trusting the viewer there might have been okay. But this guy, we got to score it. It was just a young kid that I just think did a phenomenal job. So
He did.
Mm-hmm.
And your brother scores your movie.
Yeah. Ironically, so after all, there were times in during the course of the production where we're like, well, why can't we just use Crosby's music to score the movie? And I was like, well, we're going to get to a place where his music is not going to go to the places that we need to go,
Right.
deep into his subconscious.
Okay.
And so given that he is influenced by, loves jazz music, because jazz is odd and has all these different time signatures and chords and structures and all of that
His
stuff.
whole life is jazz.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how he.
And
exists.
so thought, okay, what would his subconscious sound like before he was making music? And when he's talking about his dad going away to the war and all that, what would music sound like there? And we didn't want to do like a piece of source music there. I just felt like that's a memory. What would a memory sound like?
That's
so
fun.
then, and nothing orchestral or like typical movie score instrumentation would work. And so then my brother, I was like, well, he's the guy who's the expert in the Crosby tunings and the Joni Mitchell open tunings. And so I was like, let me just try this, Marcus. And so I brought this guy, Bill Lawrence, who's the lead keyboard player in Snarky Puppy, another band that Crosby is collaborating with. And he is influenced by McCoy Tyner and Bill Evans and Coltrane and all of that. So I got him to do some of these like ethereal jazz pieces, and then my brother to do these, guitar pieces.
He's a wonderful guitarist, your brother.
Oh, thanks. I maybe I can send you a link, or I think I sent a link, whatever.
did.
You can, I can use it or something. But he just, and it was hard for my brother to write that.
Really?
Because he doesn't want to be a film composer.
Okay.
He doesn't, and he's a rock star.
Yeah, it's a very
And-
particular thing because
Yeah.
you want to, you're supporting only, really.
Exactly.
You
drawing
can't take
attention.
over. You
You're-
have to, yes,
You're in
in
service of.
service of the visual.
Yep.
Right.
And there are things that are, sometimes you can write something, because I worked as a composer for a while myself. You can write something that works really well musically, but then when you put it against picture, it just doesn't quite fit.
Right.
And then other times you'll find something that's, I'm just going to try something crazy. And then and it magically works together.
Right.
It's like cooking,
Yeah.
two ingredients that
Yeah,
you would never
Suddenly
think.
put it
you have
together.
a
It's
new
like
take.
Yeah.
chords.
Yes.
And so there were times when he was really frustrated, and I had to have those talks where I was like, look, man, you're going to have to
Yeah.
think
Do
about
it again.
think about what this means.
Yeah.
Isn't it like
That's
a big part of creation is like knowing what it isn't?
Right.
Yeah.
It's all like we're this computer that's constantly rejecting what it isn't until it stops at what it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's not it. That's not it. There it is.
Yeah.
I think when you're creating, because it's creation, so you don't know it really.
It
It
comes
doesn't
to you.
already exist unless it's derivative of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the creation comes to you. That's where the
And you feel
expression
it.
comes from. I
Yeah,
think.
that's right.
It just came to me.
It just
Yeah.
came to me. I think that what
'Cause
I
it does.
wonder
Like
about
muse.
with our film is that it's so different than a regular documentary.
Yeah.
And I don't, I had some concern where when people who love documentaries, they kind of want that gritty thing.
Oh, like in my film, stuff happens. So, and you kind of know when you're watching a documentary that the grainier the footage, the more it's about to go down.
Yeah.
Or why would they be using this?
Yes.
And
True.
you kind of get excited.
Yes.
Yeah. It's true.
Well, we didn't have that opportunity because we weren't following these people.
Right.
And so we had all the discovery that happened had to happen after the fact, which was really difficult for us to make a decision that we could do it at all because of that.
But you have so many arcs
Yeah.
and you care about each and every one of them.
The way it was cut and put together, I think it really worked to
Yeah. And you open with something that's so huge to me that it carries you through the film, and there's tons more that brings you along, but like the psychiatrist who said these are the 10 things, and if they happen if any 6 of these happen in your childhood, what's the figure?
4,100% more likely to become an IV drug user.
And it's such an eye opener, and because these are things that happen in a lot of people's childhoods.
Yes.
Sure.
And so you kind of realize that if you're not a drug addict and some of those things have happened to you, you're defying the odds, which makes you feel strong, or it makes you feel proud that you've made good choices. Or if a lot of those things have happened to you, it's an explanation. It helps you understand, like, oh my gosh, I guess I should get help, because these are really common childhood things, like, parents divorcing, or the loss of somebody important to you at a young age, or
Alcoholic parent, or
being neglected,
Some kind
or
of
being
abuse.
yelled at, or being sexual abuse.
Even verbal abuse.
Verbal abuse, right? And he rattles off 10, and then he says any 6 of these make you. And then he says if anything in the environment caused 60% more likelihood of cancer, we'd all be
On
reacting
it.
to it. Why are we not reacting?
yeah.
It's really easy to find the kids who are susceptible and to intervene early. And so you lay it out so beautifully early in the film that you're watching the rest of it, and then you hear about this 15-year-old girl who had a tragic accident. It wasn't her fault. She was a child, and she's then blamed for harming her little cousin, and you get it.
Yeah.
So you're invested. People are invested in your film from jump.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see it. You
And-
reenacted it. That was. Oof.
And Tito, the other guy in there
Scary.
who had 6 or 7 of those,
Oh,
because
Tito.
his father was incarcerated for murder.
Yeah.
His father was a drug dealer. He was, there was violence in the home. There was all this kind of stuff. When Tito saw the movie, and I was a little worried, when I took it to Ohio to show these people from
Yeah.
Ohio, that all they knew is one afternoon they'd sat there and told their story.
Right, and now here's
And now
this.
I've got Alan Watts and Bulls and, just all this
All
visual
these
stuff.
Visual effects.
Yeah, and so, but he was so struck by that, and part of the thing with addiction is the shame, and there's something about when you understand. I mean,
Validating.
we went out afterwards, him and some people, and he just was relieved
Lighter.
almost
Yeah.
to understand that,
Of course this happened.
It
Of course
wasn't.
Why
happened.
wouldn't it happen?
How
It
would
wasn't
have
all
not
his
have
fault.
happened?
Yeah.
Again, it's
Yes,
fault.
because he ended up in prison. At 15, he was charged as an adult, and but he had to get into trafficking drugs because his father was in prison.
Yeah.
So it's a world that's very difficult, and he still struggles very much.
And he's a
Difficult to get out
talented
of.
musician.
He's a talented musician.
Yeah. So your film, it's got everything that kind of like draws people in. So I wouldn't worry about that. Every film, every documentary is different. They don't all follow the same pathway. They're not
Right.
meant to. You
Right.
take something away from it. I think the mark of a great film is how much do you think about it afterwards. And or do you want to discuss it with someone you watched it with, or those are the great films that really make you
really truly.
Yes.
That's what Billy Wilder says. Cameron Crowe's book. You want people to come and talk about your movie for at least 15 minutes afterward.
at least 15
Yes.
minutes.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to do what's Twitter trending. Today was kind of interesting because we're about 2 miles away from a raging wildfire called, according to Twitter, #GettyFire. And so #GettyFire was trending on Twitter. We celebrate, of course, the firefighters and pray for everyone's safety as we notice that what's got Twitter in a knot is that housekeepers and gardeners came to work in evacuated neighborhoods. So here's a tweet from Roseanne DeMoro, and she tweets, reason number 3,980,000 to loathe the 1%. No one called them. The 1% fled while they showed up for work. Invisible class. And then she puts #Occupy Wall Street, #Bernie 2020, and of course all the hashtags you might imagine in a tweet like that. So my question for the panel is, if you're evacuated, can you be forgiven for failure to alert your staff?
No.
I don't think you can be forgiven.
No. It's just so simple.
No.
And
You'd be-
also, it again, maybe it is because I've spent the last couple of years inside a community I would never have had access to of, just more poverty through doing this film and everything. It's the struggle is so real for people trying to pay their bills.
Mm-hmm.
So they know a fire's going on, they're going to come to work anyway, you know?
Well-
I just don't understand the thoughtlessness.
Well, what I felt like it was, rather than an indictment of the 1%, because we don't know the particulars, it's actually like a tribute to immigrants who
Yes.
always show up. And they just want to be a part of the fabric, and so they're gonna work. And there was a reply to Roseanne, and let's see, he wrote, this is from Cal, and he replied to Roseanne and said, if you read the article, you would see that most could not be reached because they were evacuating. Some workers came in against the evacuation orders, and it ended with a homeowner saying not to clean, but they will pay for the day anyway. And to me, it just seemed like some people really want to be angry at rich people, when maybe a better answer would be just to kind of understand the big picture. Yes,
Yeah.
of course, there's a lot of entitled people that wouldn't notify their staff that they were being evacuated. But also, let's not just be too quick on social media. It feels
Right,
like we're
totally.
so quick to jump on,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
this is what our opinion is supposed to be today,
Yeah.
without really...
No, the empathy of there's just empathy on both sides, because here, these people, whether they're entitled or not, are running for their lives. And they are grabbing the things that are most important to them in the house. They do have their phone on them. If they had thought about whoever it
Today's
was
Tuesday,
that
I
was
better call.
coming,
Yeah.
because they have their number, and they could have called. It really is just consideration. And I'm sure some of them were considered enough to do so. I don't think every gardener and housekeeper showed up. I'm sure some of them were notified.
Yeah.
But here we are again, jumping to the conclusion that all the gardeners and housekeepers showed up. So the image is that all these immigrants are showing up to work, and the houses are burning. On the other hand, what happened to the roadblocks? I mean, weren't people not letting them into the neighborhoods?
Yeah, like people couldn't even go in to get their hard drives or their
Right.
meds. So why were
They probably weren't let in.
This is such.
it feel
To your point, though,
Yeah.
what I really like about what you're saying, because I need to be reminded of it, and I think we all do, is that, every subject is complex. And we've gotten into a situation with how quickly we can have an opinion,
Right.
that we've forgotten the complexity of things. And
Right.
the unfortunate thing about that is, without the understanding of complexity, we won't find solutions.
Right. If you're just
Right.
going to jump on something and say hashtag,
I don't like it. Yeah.
hashtag
This isn't fair.
Like I just did. No.
Well, this
Occupy.
is a bit of a non sequitur, but it's not really. I'll never forget. I was watching the TV when the Santa Rosa fires were going on, and they were reporting about a guy who ran into his burning house, a burning inferno, to rescue his father's ashes.
Whoa.
And I thought, is that redundant?
I knew the joke was coming.
Or is that ironic? No, it's really not a joke. It really happened.
Yeah, but
I'll never forget just thinking, his ashes?
That's funny.
Why don't you just wait?
Yeah. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
They're not going to burn more.
They've survived worse.
Yeah.
They've survived one burning.
Yeah.
They're going to survive another.
That's
On that cheerful note, and please let's pray for everybody, because there's a lot of people and firefighters who are just, the work they do. I don't even know how they do it, and they do it so bravely and so proudly.
If you see firefighters at a 7-Eleven getting coffee or something,
Pay for it.
Pay for it.
Yeah.
Buy them donuts. Buy them coffee. Do something for them, because they really are our heroes right now.
I was texting with a friend of mine, because I'm from Idaho,
Right.
forest fire
Yes.
central. And, this year somehow we didn't get as many as we had last year. But, you'd think in October, the concept of protecting your house in October for a forest fire is just bizarre. And then, schools are canceled today in Idaho for snow.
Oh, wow.
So schools are canceled here for a fire, and schools are canceled here for a snow.
What is happening?
Climate change it's a hoax
It's-
invented by the Chinese. But
There seem to be climates everywhere these days. There are climates just everywhere.
yeah.
The Chinese must hire a lot of scientists, because
They
they seem
sure
to be onto something.
Yeah.
I want to thank everyone for a wonderful show today. Thank you to our guests, Lauren Sinclair Duback and AJ Eaton. Thank you to my co-host,
Pleasure
Jamie
to be here.
Alcroft. Our producer is Dina Friedman. Our tech team is Looks like it's Connor Eldridge and Francesco Demanda.
Yes.
Our sound
Good work.
mixer is John Maddox. Our webmaster is Bill Filipiak. I am Louise Palanker. Be safe, be well, be kind, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.